Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I still can't believe this happened to me at Home Depot after my shift. After working 11 straight hours in traffic control, all I wanted was to buy a new drill and go home. Just my luck that some entitled jerk would make my day even longer. For context, I work as a traffic control technician, which means I spend my days managing construction sites and road work areas. I was still in my work gear, high visibility pants and vest, with my company logo plastered on the back, complete with my certification card displayed, and a radio with a shoulder mic. Nothing like the orange aprons Home Depot employees wear. I just made it to the power tools section and was comparing drills in my price range when I heard someone behind me asking where the wax toilet rings were. I ignored it at first, figuring he was talking to an employee nearby, but then the same voice got louder, telling whoever they were addressing to do their job instead of just standing there looking at tools. I looked around expecting to see some poor employee getting yelled at. Instead, I found myself face to face with this guy in his 30s, wearing a button-down and tie, looking at me like I was the dumbest person alive. I politely asked if I could help him, which only seemed to anger him more. He yelled at me about the wax rings, his voice getting increasingly hostile. That's when it clicked. This guy thought I worked there. I tried to explain. I started to tell him I was sorry, but he cut me off before I could finish, demanding that he only wanted to hear an aisle number. He was getting louder, drawing attention from other customers, and even had the nerve to question how someone as stupid as me got hired. I tried again to explain that I didn't work there, but he wouldn't let me finish. He just kept yelling, breaking down each word as if I was too dumb to understand basic English, still demanding to know where the wax rings were. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion from my shift, or maybe it was just this guy's attitude, but I decided to have some fun. I pointed to a random aisle. When I told him it was right there, he called me stupid one more time before storming off. He came walking back a few minutes later, face red, ranting about how I didn't know how to do my job and threatening that his best friend was the district manager who would get me fired. I couldn't help myself. I pointed to the same aisle again, mockingly telling him the rings were right there and throwing his own words back at him by asking how he could be so stupid. That's when things got physical. He smacked my hand down and shoved me against the shelf. Bad move on his part. I'm not some martial arts expert, but I can handle myself. One punch to his nose sent him stumbling backward, where he hit his head on the concrete floor. He started screaming for someone to call the police, claiming I had attacked him. A crowd gathered as he lay there bleeding from his nose and the back of his head. A manager rushed over to assess the situation. The guy started ranting about how I, as an employee, had attacked him when he just asked for directions. The manager looked confused and asked who had attacked him. The guy just got more frustrated, screaming about how stupid everyone was being and pointing at me. The manager told him that I didn't actually work there. The manager took me to the security office to wait for the police. Thankfully, several customers had witnessed everything, and the security cameras caught it all. When the police arrived, they took statements from everyone and reviewed the footage. It clearly showed him assaulting me first and me defending myself. He was demanding they arrest me, so when they asked if I wanted to press charges, I didn't hesitate. They hauled him away in handcuffs, still insisting I was an employee who had attacked him unprovoked. I later found out he was charged with assault and got community service. Plus, he's banned from all Home Depot stores in the area. I guess he'll have to find somewhere else to buy his wax rings, and maybe learn to actually look for an orange apron next time he needs help. I've had a rough go with my leg for most of my life. 13 surgeries rough. Each one was supposed to make things better, but sometimes it felt like I was just collecting hospital bracelets. When I started at my new school, I was hopeful things would be different. Spoiler alert, they weren't. After just 3 weeks at the new place, I had to go in for another procedure. Nothing major by my standards. When you've had as many surgeries as I have, you kinda become numb to the whole thing. When I came back, I had all my paperwork in order, documentation for extra time between classes, needed an escort. My cousin helped with that since we had the same classes, and most importantly, I needed to use the elevator since stairs were a no-go with my walker. The first two requirements caused some annoyance, but nothing I couldn't handle. The security guards would constantly stop us, questioning why we were in the halls during class time. I have to explain about my documentation for extended passing time, and then they'd question why my cousin was with me. He'd have to explain that he was my escort, and we had the same classes. This happened so many times I could recite the whole exchange in my sleep. But the real nightmare? The elevator situation. The vice principal refused to give me a personal key, claiming it was for security reasons since the elevator key was the same as their interior door keys. When I asked how I was supposed to get to my classes, they assured me there would always be someone on my floor to help with the elevator. That was a lie, a big fat lie. About 75% of the time there wasn't a soul around to help. I'd be stuck in the hallways during class changes, which meant dealing with crowds while using a walker. Not fun. But the worst part? Lunch. I kept missing lunch because I'd be stuck waiting for someone to operate the elevator. After 3 weeks of this and with my regular escort, my cousin, out sick, I made what was probably the dumbest decision of my life. I tried to use the stairs. Remember that walker I mentioned? Yeah, I fell. Hard. One of my friends found me as lunch was ending and got help. Another friend tracked down my other cousin, who managed to get me calm enough to call my mom. That's when things got interesting. When my mom arrived, she asked what happened. I reluctantly told her I didn't want to miss lunch again, so I tried the stairs. The look on my mom's face? Pure rage. She spun around so fast I thought she'd create a tornado. She demanded that someone get the principal and vice principal immediately. When they walked in, my mom unleashed hell. I can't repeat most of what she said. Let's just say it wasn't PG-13. Then the vice principal made the mistake of starting to make a disparaging comment about my condition. He didn't even finish his sentence before my mom lunged at him. The school security officers had to hold her back. That's when things got even messier. They looked into our file and discovered I was using my grandmother's address. She watched me after school while my parents worked. They used this as an excuse to expel me. The principal coldly told us I could be some other school's problem now. I had to have another surgery to fix the damage from the fall. But here's where it gets good. My parents got statements from teachers and doctors and found a lawyer who'd won multiple cases against our school board. He took our case for free because he was sick of dealing with their nonsense. He told us his case might be what they needed to finally fix their behavior. 9 months later, we got more than just a settlement for my medical procedures. The principal and vice principal lost their jobs and their administrative credentials in our state. The school had to go through a complete administrative overhaul. At my new school, the State Board of Education superintendent personally made sure I got my elevator key on day 1. No questions asked, no waiting around, no falling downstairs. I heard the former vice principal tried to get a job at another school district, but apparently got physically aggressive with a disabled student's parent. Doesn't look good on a resume. He's working retail. My ex-wife and I met in college. She was charming, outgoing, and seemed like the perfect match. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and everything seemed perfect. We had 2 beautiful children, bought a house together, and I thought we were living the American dream. That was until I started noticing changes in her behavior. She began working late, constantly texting, and being protective of her phone. I tried to ignore the signs, telling myself I was being paranoid. But then came the evidence I couldn't ignore. Text messages, hotel receipts, and finally a mutual friend confirming what I had suspected all along. She was cheating with her coworker. When I confronted her about it, she completely denied everything. I told her I had seen the messages, but she insisted I was being ridiculous and that the messages meant nothing. When I begged her to just be honest with me, saying I deserved that much, she refused to continue the conversation and accused me of seeing things that weren't there. The separation that followed was messy. We had to divide everything we'd built together over the years. The most complicated part was dealing with our cars and other shared possessions. We had 2 cars. One was paid off, which I kept, and the other still had payments. She needed the car with payments for work, but her credit wasn't good enough to refinance it in her name. We came to an agreement about the car. I would leave my name on the loan, but she would be responsible for all the payments. I made it clear that if she stopped making payments, I would have it voluntarily repossessed since I couldn't afford them. She agreed to these terms without much argument. I then offered her the washer and dryer since I was moving to an apartment and wouldn't need them, but specified this was only if she kept up with the car payments. She accepted this deal too. Things were relatively calm for a few months until we got into an argument about our kids. I don't even remember what it was about now, but she showed up at my apartment unannounced, fuming with anger. She threw the car keys at me and mockingly told me to have fun figuring out how to make the payments. Then she demanded that I get all my stuff out of what she now called her storage unit by tomorrow. When I reminded her that it was our storage unit, she threatened to throw away my belongings if I didn't remove them. I decided to go to the storage unit that same day. When I was sorting through our things, I spotted the washer and dryer in the corner. A smile crept across my face as I remembered our agreement. She could only have them if she kept up with the car payments. Since she just dumped the car back on me, those were technically mine again. I immediately called some friends to help me move them out. Just as we finished loading them, my phone started ringing. It was her screaming about where her washer and dryer were. When I reminded her that they were actually mine since she broke the car payment agreement, she threatened that she'd call the police and they would arrest me for theft. I told her good luck with that since I had the receipts showing I bought them, and we had a verbal agreement. She ended the call by yelling that this wasn't over. The next day she called again, this time with a different tone. She tried to backtrack, saying she wanted the car back and had just been angry the day before. That's when I had to tell her about what had happened. As it turned out, the universe had other plans. The morning after she dumped the car on me, I was driving to work when a truck ran a red light. The car was completely totaled. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but the insurance company declared it a total loss. They paid off the remaining loan balance, and just like that, the car problem was solved. She was furious when she heard about the accident. She accused me of orchestrating the whole thing on purpose, which was ridiculous, as if I would deliberately get hit by a truck just to spite her. When I pointed out how absurd that suggestion was, she started yelling about how much she needed that car. I simply reminded her that she should have thought about that before throwing the keys at me. She had to buy a new car at a much higher interest rate because of her poor credit, while I got to sell the washer and dryer for a decent price. I used that money to buy a nice entertainment center for my apartment, something I actually needed. She's still telling people I staged the accident to get back at her. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here enjoying my karma-funded entertainment center, wondering if she ever figured out how to do laundry without a washer and dryer. I've been working as an automotive technician for over 20 years now, but this story from my early days still brings a smile to my face. Back in the mid-90s, I was working at a small auto repair shop. It was a modest place. Just the owner and 2 technicians, including myself. We weren't the biggest shop in town, but we knew our stuff and took pride in honest work. One sunny afternoon, we got a call about a BMW that wouldn't start at the local golf course. Being the available tech at the time, I took charge of the situation. After getting it towed to our shop, I started my diagnostic process. The engine would crank but wouldn't start. A classic fuel system issue, as it turned out. After a thorough inspection and confirming it was indeed a failed fuel pump, I wrote up the estimate. The total came to around $525, including parts and labor. My coworker called the customer with the quote, accidentally forgetting to mention the towing fee. I also added a fuel filter at the last minute just to be thorough, charging only for the part. When the customer came to pick up his car, that's when things got interesting. He immediately started questioning the bill, demanding to know why it was $625 instead of $525. I explained about the towing fee that wasn't included in the quote and the additional fuel filter I'd added, making sure to mention that I hadn't charged any labor for installing it. He wasn't having any of it though. he started accusing us of trying to rip him off, insisting that the fuel filter was probably the only real problem. I tried to reassure him that the fuel pump was definitely the issue and offered to show him the old parts. He demanded to see them, wrote a check, and left. A week later, we discovered he'd stopped payment on the check. The owner called him to find out why. The customer went off on a rant, claiming that his mechanic had looked at the fuel pump we replaced and declared it was perfectly fine. He accused us of scamming him. Now, anyone who knows anything about cars knows that a restricted fuel filter alone won't prevent a car from starting. It might affect performance, but that's about it. This guy was clearly trying to play us. We took him to small claims court. He didn't even show up, so we won by default. The bill was now up to $1,175 with court costs and attorney fees. In our state, we can place a mechanic's lien on vehicles when customers don't pay, and that's exactly what we did. A few months later, I spotted his BMW at the same golf course. One quick call to a towing company later, and his car was at the impound lot. The bill had now grown to $1,350 with the impound fee. When he finished his golf game and found his car missing, he called the police to report it stolen. They told him about the mechanic's lien. Then the phone call started. He called the shop multiple times, each call filled with cursing and yelling. The owner had to keep hanging up on him until finally telling him that he'd only continue the conversation if the customer could discuss things like an adult. The customer then tried threatening to sue us. The owner reminded him about the papers he'd been served months ago and how he never showed up to court. Backed into a corner, the customer declared he'd just let the bank take the car back. The owner explained that this would still mean the bank would have to pay our bill, and he'd be responsible for the difference after they auctioned it off. His wife showed up the next day with cash to pay the $1,350. But here's where it gets even better. We weren't the only ones he'd tried to scam. The local tire shop owner had been stiffed by the same guy for $1,100 worth of tires. After the wife paid us, we gave our tire shop friend a call. He had the car picked up and impounded again for his unpaid bill, adding another $175 impound fee. In the end, this guy's attempt to avoid paying $625 cost him $2,625. I heard his wife was furious, and he wasn't seen at the golf course for quite a while after that. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.